DirectX 12 update is finally here that allows direct VRAM access from the CPU. And this is going to be a big deal in games in the next couple of years.
Yes, especially with the increase of the amount of RAM.
Yeah.
And as long as you're not stuffing that with 4K textures,
right?
There's going to be a lot of overhead on there.
We might as well go ahead and talk about video RAM while we're at this, because that has been a hot button topic for the last couple of weeks. And I think a great segue to talk about both at the same time. So resizable bar has had official support from Microsoft for quite some time. It has been integrated into both Intel and AMD as far as a feature set goes, but it is finally coming to DirectX 12 officially, not just Vulkan, not just OpenGL. So this is DirectX's final implementation, or first implementation of resizable bar, which is direct memory sharing with the GPU. What that means is you can load textures into your physical RAM and copy them to your GPU. You can read textures directly from your GPU, from your CPU, and basically decrease the latency and increase the amount of cache that you have when it comes to loading textures, game assets, etc. Definitely a good thing to have. Definitely a good feature, and something that's going to be implemented more and more as we move forward, as a lot of GPUs are starting to support resizable bar. And in fact, some of them pretty much require it. If you look at Intel's Arc, the A750, A770, and if you look at some of the newer GPUs, a la 4000 series and 7000 series from NVIDIA and AMD. But video memory has been kind of a hot button subject of the last couple of weeks, as we're starting to see a lot of games, even at 1080p, that are maxing out cards below 8 gigabytes of video memory. I believe Hardware Unboxed was kind of one of the first channels to go like, whoa,
what's going on?
The last 6 months has been weird because we can't benchmark our GTX 1060 6 gig anymore, or our RX 570 4 gig anymore. What's going on? Oh, we're maxing out video memory in a good number of our test suite of games. And I believe Gamers Nexus also did a piece on this. I could be wrong. I don't remember. But I've been seeing news articles popping up left and right about this really over the last couple of weeks, as people realize, oh, you mean I can't play Miles Morales or The Last of Us or Horizon, what was the Forbidden West, with only 4 gigabytes of video memory? Nope, not if you want sometimes even 1080p, but 1440 and especially 4K. So I released a video earlier today where I finally got hands-on time with an RTX 4080.
Yes, that's right.
16 gigs of VRAM. I played Cyberpunk at 4K and used 13 of it. Now, I know that's Cyberpunk, and I know that's an edge case, but Red Dead Redemption was using 10. Doom Eternal was using 12. It
fills up quick at 4K.
It really does. And especially when you're getting games that have implemented full 4K textures. In fact, was it Fallout 4 that just got a 4K texture pack?
I think so.
I want to say within the last week or so. It was like a 46 gigabyte update to the game.
Yeah, it's huge. It was just a huge update.
So, yeah, it's this weird thing when technology takes a leap like this. And we really only see it when there's competition. Steve, you and I both, being computer builders from the 90s, we remember this. We remember this vividly of, what do you mean my 9-month-old graphics card physically cannot run this game.
Yeah, I know. Oh yes. They were advancing leaps and bounds very quickly back then.
Yeah. What do you mean my brand new AMD K62 533 can't run this new game? Oh, it requires an Athlon XP 1 gigahertz. What do you mean my GeForce 2 can't run this? Well, we implemented shaders in GeForce 3. So pixel shading is a requirement of this game now because real-time lighting. Remember that?
Oh yeah, I absolutely do.
You're going to regret every moment you spent in your life without having real-time shaders, real-time pixel shaders.
Yes, of course.
Or was that ray tracing? I forget. But yeah, I remember those days. I remember those days vividly and vehemently.
Doom 3 was one of the first to implement it in a game.
Yeah. I jumped from a GeForce 2 to a GeForce 4, although it was an MX440. So while still technically a GeForce 4, it was a cut down GeForce 4 with a full 8 megabytes of video memory.
I know. Yeah. When it went to the gigabyte, when VRAM got to the gigabyte, I'm just like, oh, that's too much.
Yeah.
You're not going to need any more than that. That's crazy.
I think I jumped from a 128 to a 2 gig card. I made a massive leap.
Right.
It was a very interesting time, but it's a time that a lot of people aren't used to anymore because there's not a lot of, if you have a high-end GPU from 10 years ago, you can still play at 1080p in almost every game that's been released within the last 12 months. It's not outside of the conversation to load up a Cyberpunk on a GTX 780 released a la 2012.
Yeah.
You're not going to get 120 FPS.
No,
you're not going to game at
the resolution
ultra settings, but
you can run it.
You can still play it.
That was another thing too. Adaptive settings, they didn't have some games did, but the settings for most games back then were very, very rudimentary.
Yes.
There was not too much tinkering that you can do. Resolution set, texture quality.
Yeah.
That was kind of about it. I mean, really. Sometimes there were some proprietary features and stuff you can turn off and on, particles and stuff like that. But
the specialty 3D FX crap.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, no, it's been a really long time since we've seen leaps like this, and we're seeing it just as much on the CPU side of things as well. I've talked about this at length. We haven't seen this kind of a CPU war since the turn of the century, and I'm sorry to use that phrase.
That's true, though.
It is true. Since the original gigahertz race, we haven't seen doubling of performance generation over generation within an 18-month period. It just hasn't happened. But look at 10th gen CPUs. Look at Zen Plus and Zen 2 CPUs. And then look at Raptor Lake and Zen 4. It's nuts how much faster these cards are. Look at Turing cards. Look at the 2000 series RTX cards, first generation RTX. Say what you will about it. They were decent. They were decent. Yeah. They were expensive, but they were faster than Pascal. Price per dollar were about the same price point, which kind of sucked. But a 2080 Ti is still an 11 gigabyte graphics card. That was faster than the 1080 Ti and Titan X that came before it. And what can you say? But then you look at the 3090, and then you look at the 4090.
I know.
Where they doubled and then doubled again.
Yeah. It's just exponentially going up.
The 4090 is 4 times faster than a 2080 Ti. And it's not even close. And we're starting to see where some of that lagging behind or anti-competition, where GPUs just weren't being pushed for so long, because when Pascal came out, Pascal doubled Maxwell. And that was a hell of a thing, because even Kepler to Maxwell and whatever AMD was doing with Fiji and Polaris, it just wasn't making leaps and bounds. And because as game developers, you want your game to be playable by as many people as possible.
Yes.
You tend to code for the lowest denominator. And for a lot of gamers, that tended to be some of the MMOs, that tended to be, your PUBGs and your Apex Legends and things like that.
Oh yeah, people are doing Fortnite. Everyone else kids playing Fortnite. Yeah.
Exactly. And so Fortnite can run on a freaking potato.
They can put on nothing, yeah.
Right. You can run Fortnite at like high settings, 1080p, and still get 60 FPS on an RX 550.
Yeah,
it does not take much. And that's where most games were kind of focusing as far as like 1080p low settings goes. With like, if you got 2 gigs of VRAM, hell, you can run GTA 5 at 1080p low settings at 100 FPS on a GT 1030.
Yeah.
That's where games were at.
And that's a nothing card.
Right.
I mean, you can get that super cheap still.
Right. And now have you tried running Miles Morales or Last of Us?
No, I have not. Well, okay, there's some optimization problems with Last of Us. It's currently being like panned hard on Steam reviews because of the performance problems, and they are like, okay, we're gonna fix it always, and I'm sure it'll get fixed because it's an old game. Come on.
Yeah.
I mean, they did redo it. They put new textures on it, but they'll get it fixed. But yeah, no, Miles Morales. You need more. Even Cyberpunk, to a certain extent, is a very hard game to run, and that came out a year and a half ago, a year ago almost.
2020, 3 years ago. November 2020.
No, did it really?
November 2020.
Oh crap! All right. But yeah, still no. There's some people having hard times.
Let me verify that.
Yeah, let me go. I was just gonna look it up too.
April 16th, 2020.
Okay.
And then finally released November. Or no, sorry. E3 2019. It set its initial release date at April 16th of 2020. That was delayed until September, and then November, and then finally December 10th, 2020. So yes, 2020.
Okay, it's end of 2020, but it was still 2020. Okay,
2020.
So,
yeah.
All right.
2020.
2020.
And while you can get some playable frame rates out of Cyberpunk at 720p and at low settings, that's been one of my favorite games to test on a lot of handheld consoles that I've reviewed. I've reviewed the GPD Win 3. I've reviewed the One X Player 2. I've reviewed the Aya Neo Next and the Aya Neo Air. And on a lot of their advertisements for those consoles, they would show Cyberpunk running. And I would fire it up and it'd run at 24 FPS.
Yeah.
And yes, it's the worst performing game on that handheld, but they were still advertising it. And I'm sorry, but 24 FPS in a game that honestly should be more a la a Twitch shooter because of how precise your aiming has to be.
Yeah.
You need 60 in that game. Like, playing some games at 30 is still fine for all intents and purposes.
There's still a lot of consoles and stuff that target 30.
Right.
They don't target 60.
The consoles anymore. So if you look at the Series X and if you look at the PS5, they're targeting 60 now because it's kind of expected. But if you look at the Switch and if you look at Breath of the Wild runs at like 28.
Yeah.
Most of the time. Downwards of like 20. And I played the entire game on the Switch and damn near 100%ed it and didn't care. Because that game can play at that frame rate and still feel good. Whereas other games like, Doom.
You need that twitch that
doesn't feel great on the Switch.
No, it does not. You don't want any chunky moving arounds.
Right. So... But the problem is when you're advertising a game like Cyberpunk on a console like the GPD Win 3, it had better freaking be a good experience. And it just flat out wasn't. And that was one of the first indications that we're going to take a leap. Was Cyberpunk being the crisis of our day, being the like, you'd better have a balls to the wall system, or this game just flat out won't run.
Won't run, yeah.
Because it's been a long time since you've been able to have a discrete graphics card and not be able to run a game.
Mm-hmm.
That's something no one knows in this day and age.